The wind carried the taste of ash across the dead land. Once this place had been a city full of light and sound. Now it was only broken towers, rusted metal, and the endless gray of a burned world. The sky was covered by dark clouds that had not moved for years. No birds flew. No engines roared. The world was silent, except for the whispers of those who still hoped. Among the ruins stood a man named Rion. His face was lined with dust and time. Around him, a few survivors worked to build a small fire near the base of an old monument. It was all that remained of their faith. The monument had once been a statue of a human figure reaching toward the sky, but the upper half had fallen long ago. Now only the lower part remained, the hands broken, the face gone. Rion looked at the people who sat near the fire. They were hungry and tired, wrapped in old coats. The children were quiet, too weak to speak. Yet, when the flames rose, they looked up with hope in their eyes. The fire was the only light they had left in a world that had forgotten them. For generations, they had sent signals into the sky. Old machines built before the fall still worked in some places. Rion's group had found one, a large metal tower with a dish that could send radio pulses. Every night, Rion climbed the tower and sent the same message again and again, calling for help. The message was simple. To those who can hear, we are still alive. He did not know if anyone heard it. The stars above had grown dim long ago. The people said the gods had left them. Others said the stars were dying, just like the earth. But Rion refused to stop sending the message. He believed that someone, somewhere, would answer. The wind grew stronger, shaking the tower as Rion climbed. He reached the top and looked out at the silent world below. He pressed the switch that sent the signal. The dish turned slowly, releasing waves of sound that vanished into the night. He waited, as he always did, for a reply that never came. Down below, the firelight flickered across the faces of the survivors. An old woman named Mira whispered prayers. She spoke of the gods who once watched from the sky. She said they had to keep praying so that the gods might hear and return to save them. Rion listened from the tower. He did not stop her. Faith, even in silence, kept them alive. When the signal stopped, Rion climbed down. The sky was darker than usual. The clouds seemed thicker, heavier, as if the air itself was waiting. He sat beside Mira. She handed him a piece of hard bread, their last from the stores. He thanked her and shared it with the others. "Do you think the gods can still hear us?" Mira asked softly. Rion looked at the fire. "Maybe," he said. "Or maybe they are gone." She frowned. "Then who will save us?" He smiled faintly. "If not the gods, then someone else. We just have to keep calling." The night was long and cold. The survivors huddled near the fire. The children fell asleep. Rion stayed awake, watching the horizon. The ground beneath them trembled from time to time. It had done so for years, since the Great Silence began. No one knew why. Some said it was the earth dying. Others said the gods were angry beneath the soil. Rion thought it was only the planet shifting, trying to breathe again after too much pain. By morning, the tremors had grown stronger. Dust rose in clouds as the ground shook. People screamed and ran from their shelters. Rion shouted for them to stay calm, but the shaking became violent. The old tower tilted, its base cracking. Rion fell to his knees, holding the dirt as the earth opened near the edge of the camp. A deep sound came from below. A sound like metal grinding against stone. The survivors froze. From the crack in the ground came a dull red light. The air grew hot. Rion stared as the light spread, glowing brighter and brighter until he had to cover his eyes. The ground split wider, and something massive began to rise. It was not stone or lava. It was metal. A shape formed from beneath the surface, covered in dust and earth. It moved slowly at first, then with purpose. Giant claws of steel emerged, followed by arms the size of buildings. The survivors screamed and scattered as the machine lifted itself from the deep. It stood taller than the ruins around it. Its body blackened and scarred. Its eyes burned with red fire. The sound it made was like thunder mixed with 1,000 broken engines. The people thought it was a demon. Some fell to their knees and prayed. Others ran, believing the end had come. Rian did not move. He watched in silence, trying to understand what he saw. The machine turned its head, scanning the area. Symbols flickered across its chest. Old human markings half buried under centuries of decay. It was ancient, but alive. Not alive like a man, but alive like a storm. Mira cried out, "The gods have sent their judgment." Rian shook his head. "No, that is no god." The machine raised one arm, and the ground shook again. Its movements were heavy and slow, as if awakening after a long sleep. From the pit behind it, more shapes began to rise, smaller ones, all made of metal and fire. The survivors ran toward the hills, leaving everything behind. Rian stayed until the first of the smaller machines crawled out. They looked like spiders made of iron, each with burning cores that glowed red. They moved across the ruins, scanning the area. One stopped near the broken tower and began tearing it apart, feeding the pieces into its chest. Rian backed away. He realized what they were doing. They were gathering metal, rebuilding themselves. He turned and ran toward the others. The survivors had gathered near a line of broken vehicles. Mira held a child close to her chest, crying. Rian looked back at the machines. The largest one stood still now, watching the horizon. Its head turned slowly toward the camp. Its eyes glowed brighter, focusing on them. Rian shouted, "Move," into the tunnels. They ran toward an old subway entrance half buried under rubble. Inside, the air was cold and wet, but it was shelter. They closed the gate behind them and waited. Above, the sound of heavy footsteps moved through the ruins. Hours passed before Rian dared to climb back to the surface. The fires were out. The camp was gone. The tower was nothing but twisted metal. The ground was scarred with tracks from the machines. He saw them in the distance, walking slowly toward the north, as if following a signal that only they could hear. Rian felt both fear and wonder. These things were not demons. They were machines made by humans long ago. He remembered the old stories told by the elders' tales of great wars, of machines built to defend Earth against enemies from the stars. When the wars ended, the machines had been buried, sealed away deep beneath the ground. No one had seen them since, and now they were awake again. He walked back toward the tunnel entrance. Mira waited at the gate. "Are they gone?" she asked. "For now," he said. "What were they?" Rian looked at the ground. "They were ours once," she did not understand. "Ours? Human machines? From before the fall? They were made to fight. But something must have called them back." Mira shivered. "Then we should run far from here." Rian nodded slowly. "Yes, but before we do, I need to know why they woke." He looked at the sky. The clouds still hung heavy, dark as ever. The signal tower was gone, but his transmitter was still in his pack. He took it out, cleaned the dust from its screen, and turned it on. The small green light blinked weakly. The last message he sent had reached the sky only hours before the machines came. A thought came to him, quiet but sharp. What if his signal was what woke them? He kept the thought to himself. He could not tell the others yet. They needed hope, not fear. That night, they hid deep within the tunnels. The sound of the machines echoed faintly through the walls. Sometimes, the ground above them would rumble. Children cried in the dark, and the adults whispered prayers. Mira sat near the entrance, holding her necklace of old metal beads. She prayed to the gods once more, asking for light to return. Rian listened to her voice. He wanted to believe in the gods too, but his mind was fixed on the machines. If they were truly human creations, there might be a way to reach them. If they had memory, maybe they could be reasoned with. He had seen the markings on their armor letters and numbers written in human script. Somewhere inside them, the spark of human design still lived. Before sleep took him, he made a silent promise. He would find out where they came from and why they had returned. If these demons of the earth were born from human hands, then humanity would find a way to face them again. Above the tunnels, the earth continued to tremble. The machines moved through the dead cities, their red lights painting the ruins in a glow that looked like fire. From far away they seemed like monsters, but up close they were something else, shadows of humanity's own forgotten power, walking again in a world that no longer remembered their name. And though Rian did not yet know it, his signal had been heard. It had not reached the gods in the sky. It had reached the sleeping cores deep within the planet, where the Earthborn waited. His call had awakened them. The tunnels were dark and cold. The survivors huddled together, listening to the deep echoes that came from above. The ground shook from time to time like thunder trapped under the earth. Each tremor made the lights flicker and the dust fall from the ceiling. The people whispered to each other, afraid that the machines would find them. Rian sat near the entrance, holding his small radio transmitter. Its weak green light was the only thing that gave him comfort. He had built it from the old parts of the tower before it fell. The others wanted him to destroy it, fearing it might call the machines again, but he could not. It was their only link to the world that once was. Mira walked up beside him. Her face looked tired, but her eyes still held calm strength. She had been like a mother to the survivors. Her faith kept many from giving up. "You should rest," she said quietly. Rian shook his head. "I can't. The machines are still moving out there. I can feel it. You think they will come here?" "They might," Rian said. "Or maybe they are searching for something else. But I need to know what woke them." Mira looked at the radio. "You think it was your signal, don't you?" He hesitated. "I don't know. But if it was, then it means they were listening. Maybe they can still hear." She frowned. "They are not gods, Rian. They are demons of metal." "Maybe," he said softly, "but they were made by us. If they were made by humans, then maybe they can still understand us." Mira sighed and went back to the others. Rian stayed near the entrance, thinking. The machines had not attacked their tunnel yet. That meant they were focused elsewhere. He needed to learn what they were doing. The next morning, he gathered 3 volunteers: Leon, a young engineer who once worked on old machines; Taro, a quiet man who was good with maps; and Nia, a scout who could move silently through ruins. Together, they prepared to leave the tunnels and observe the surface. Before they left, Mira handed Rian a small charm made of metal beads. "For protection," she said. "If they are demons, you will need it. If they are men's creations, maybe they will remember the hands that made them." Rian nodded and placed the charm around his neck. They climbed the broken stairway leading to the surface. The morning light was pale and weak. The sky looked bruised and heavy with dust. When they reached the top, they saw the ruins stretching far into the distance. Smoke rose from what had once been the city center. The giant machine that had first emerged was gone. Its deep tracks led north, tearing through the old streets. The smaller machines moved like insects following behind it. The group moved carefully, staying low among the rubble. They saw what the machines had done. Buildings were stripped of metal and fuel. Cars and towers were broken down to parts. The machines gathered every piece of steel, copper, and energy cells they could find. It was as if they were rebuilding something. Lian knelt beside a melted pipe and touched the surface. "They are collecting power," he said. "Old reactors, batteries, anything that can be used." Rian frowned. "For what?" "I don't know," Lian said. "But it looks like they are following a plan." They followed the tracks until they reached the edge of the old industrial zone. The land was open there, filled with wrecked machines from before the fall. At the center of the plain stood a large crater, glowing with red light. The ground around it had melted into glass. The machines were working in silence, lifting huge blocks of metal and placing them in precise patterns. The air hummed with energy. Taro whispered, "They are building a fortress." Rian stared at the sight. The machines moved with purpose, like builders who remembered every detail of a forgotten design. He noticed that they did not fight each other. Every action was perfect, every movement coordinated. It was as if an invisible command guided them all. Lian pointed toward the center. "Look there." At the heart of the crater stood a massive figure, larger than any other. Its frame was ancient and worn, but its eyes burned with deep red light. Around it, smaller machines bowed their heads, as if showing respect. Rian realized this one was the leader. The air vibrated as the giant lifted its arm. It spoke in a voice that was not human, a deep metallic sound that rolled across the plain. The words were not clear, but they carried a strange rhythm, code being repeated. The other machines responded with a loud mechanical roar. Then they began working even faster. Rian's group ducked behind a wall. Naya whispered, "We need to go back. If they see us, we're dead." Rian nodded. "Just a little longer. I want to record this." He lifted his small camera and zoomed in on the machines. The giant in the center began carving symbols into the ground with a beam of light. The symbols glowed red, forming a circle that pulsed with power. The smaller machines moved to the edges, connecting wires and tubes into the earth. "They are awakening something else," Leanne said. "Something deeper." Suddenly, one of the smaller machines turned its head. Its sensors glowed blue for a moment, scanning the area. Rian froze. The machine began walking in their direction. "Run," Rian whispered. They slipped through the ruins, trying not to make a sound. But the machine's steps grew louder. It was following them. Its body was fast and light, moving on four legs like a hunter. Rian and his team ran through the broken buildings, jumping over debris. The machine fired a beam of red light that cut through a wall beside them. They reached the edge of the ruins and slid down a slope of ash. The tunnel entrance was only a few hundred meters away. The machine leaped from the wall and landed near them, its claws digging into the ground. Naya threw a smoke flare, filling the air with thick white fog. The machine paused, scanning the cloud. Rian and the others used the moment to escape into the tunnels. Inside, the survivors closed the gate behind them. The machine stopped outside, its red sensors glowing through the fog. It stood there for several minutes, then turned away and walked back toward the crater. Everyone inside was breathing heavily. Mira came forward, her eyes wide. "What happened?" "They are building something," Rian said. "A fortress, or maybe a city, and there's a leader among them." Mira looked fearful. "Then the gods have truly forsaken us." Rian shook his head. "No, we did this. They were built by humans. They are following an old purpose." "What purpose?" she asked. "I don't know yet," he said, "but we must find out before they finish." Later that night, Rian watched the recordings from his camera. The glowing symbols in the crater appeared on the small screen. Leanne studied them carefully. "These are not alien symbols," he said. "They are human. The markings match the old military codes from the last World War." Rian leaned closer. "Can you read them?" "Some of them," Leon said. "It says something about Project Edenfall. I've seen that name before in the archives of the old defense network. It was supposed to be a secret human weapon." Heart beat faster. "You mean those machines were part of that project?" "Yes," Leanne said. "They were made to protect Earth from invaders. They were programmed to activate only if the planet was in danger." Mira looked at them both. "Then why are they attacking us?" Leon sighed. "Maybe they don't know who we are anymore. Maybe they think humanity is gone, and they are following their last command." Rian stood and walked to the wall of the tunnel. His shadow stretched long under the dim light. "If that is true, then we need to remind them." He turned back to the group. "We can use the old codes. If we find a working terminal connected to their network, maybe we can send a message. If they still recognize human authority, they might stop." Taro looked doubtful. "That's dangerous. If you send the wrong signal, they could attack all of us." "I know," Rian said, "but doing nothing is worse." For days, they prepared. Leanne repaired the old generator to power the communication console. Taro mapped the underground lines leading to an old military base near the ruins. Nia trained the scouts to move quietly above ground. Everyone worked with quiet determination. Knowing that the machines were growing stronger every day, during one night Rian went outside alone. The air was cold and still. He looked toward the horizon, where the red glow of the crater lit the clouds. The machines moved like shadows, silent and endless. He whispered to himself, "You were made by us. You belong to us. You are not gods." He did not know if anyone or anything could hear him, but he kept speaking. The earth beneath his feet vibrated again, and for a brief moment, he thought he saw one of the smaller machines stop and turn its head in his direction. Its red light flickered once, then vanished into the dark. He returned to the tunnel before dawn. Leanne met him at the entrance. "We're ready," Leanne said. "If the lines are still active, we can send the signal tomorrow." Leanne nodded. "Then, tomorrow, we speak to the demons of the earth." The survivors gathered that night in silence. Some prayed. Others sat with weapons in hand, waiting for what might come. Rian did not pray this time. He sat beside the console, looking at the switch that would send their message into the old system. If it worked, they might save what was left of humanity. If it failed, they might bring destruction upon them all. The tunnels smelled of metal and dust. Rian sat at the old communication console, the soft hum of the generator filling the room. Leon worked beside him, rewiring old circuits and checking the data lines. Taro and Nia moved quietly around the edge of the chamber, listening for signs of movement above ground. Mira had gathered the children in a corner, trying to keep their spirits steady. The air was tense. Every survivor knew the machines were out there, building, searching, and watching. Rian placed his hands on the console. His fingers trembled. Slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of responsibility. "We are about to speak to them," he said. "We're about to remind them who made them." Leanne nodded. "If they remember, they might stop. If not, we risk making them angry." Rian took a deep breath. "We have no choice. The machines are already awake. They're following some old command. If we do nothing, they could destroy everything." Push the switch, sending the first signal through the wires. The screen flickered to life, displaying rows of code and symbols. These were the ancient programming commands used by the machine's creators. Rian had spent days translating them from the old defense archives. It was difficult, but he was determined. Outside, the earth rumbled faintly. The machines paused in their work. Rian's heart skipped a beat. It was a small sign, but it meant something. They were listening. He typed the next sequence, sending instructions meant to awaken memory and recall purpose. "Remember who made you," he whispered. "Remember your mission. Remember humanity." The lights in the console flickered again. The hum of the generator became louder, vibrating in the walls. Then a low mechanical sound echoed from above. It was not thunder. It was the machines answering, responding to a voice they had not heard in centuries. The sound was deep and uneven, almost like the groan of a giant waking from sleep. Rian felt it in his chest. Leon leaned close. "It's working. One of them is responding." Rian looked at the monitor. A signal returned from the largest machine in the crater. Its data pattern was shifting, changing from aggressive commands to something new. The machine was pausing in its destruction. The smaller machines slowed their work as well. The air above ground seemed to hum with energy. The machines were communicating with each other, adjusting to something unknown. Nia's eyes widened. They stopped. All of them. Rian smiled faintly, but he did not celebrate. "Not yet," he said. "We need more. We need them to remember everything." For the next hours, Rian sent sequences of old imagery, showing humans working, laughing, building. The machines above moved differently now, more precise and careful. One of the smaller machines approached the edge of the crater, lowering its glowing sensors as if examining the ground beneath it. It paused, turned, and then moved back, toward the large machine in the center. "It is as if they are learning again," Leanne said. "They are thinking about what they see." Rian nodded. He realized that they were not monsters. They were remnants of humanity, steel and circuits, carrying the memory of their creators. They could still remember, still recognize what it meant to protect. If they had been lost for centuries, they could now be found again. He sent a message in a form that the machines could read. "You were built to protect humans. Your mission is not to destroy them. You are part of us." The response came slowly. The earth vibrated again, and the giant machine in the center lifted its arm. Its glowing eyes changed from red to a softer orange, flickering as though the light inside it was shifting. The smaller machines paused and looked toward the leader. Their red glow changed slightly as well, as if their perception was being altered. "This is incredible," Leanne whispered. "They are remembering." Rian continued, sending more imagery, showing scenes of children, cities, and forests. He showed them images of humans working together, building machines, and caring for one another. The machines began moving with purpose again, but this time differently. They were no longer tearing the ruins apart, were analyzing, calculating, deciding how to act. Outside the tunnel, the survivors could hear the low hum of the machines. It was not threatening. It was steady, almost like breathing. Myra stepped closer to the console, holding her hands together. "Do you think they understand?" "I believe they do," Rian said. "They are beginning to remember." Hours passed, and the machines continued to change. The leader, the largest of all, lifted its head high. The orange glow in its eyes became steady and calm. Then it began to move through the ruins, slower now, careful. Its steps were heavy, but deliberate. The smaller machines followed in order, rearranging debris, gathering materials not to destroy, but to reconstruct. Rian realized that they were building again, but not a fortress to attack. They were creating something new, something protective. Leon checked the readings on the console. The core programming is stabilizing. They are accepting the commands. They are integrating our memories with their systems. "What does that mean?" Nia asked, stepping closer. "It means," Rian said, "that they are remembering why they exist. They know who humans are. They know what their purpose is." The survivors watched in amazement as the earth above seemed alive with motion. Giant machines moved in harmony like a single organism. Dust and debris were cleared, and what had been broken was slowly rearranged. The giant leader placed a large metal piece in the center of the ruins. It shone with a soft light. It was a signal, a message that could be seen from far away. It was a beacon. Rian understood instantly. It was not a threat. It was a call. A signal that humans were recognized and protected. Mira held her hands over her mouth. "It is beautiful," she whispered. Rian nodded. "These are not demons. They are guardians, made by human hands. They are proof that we can rise again, even from the ruins." But as the machines continued their work, Rian noticed something worrying. Some of the smaller machines hesitated near the edges of the ruins. Their sensors glowed red again. They seemed to question whether the humans in the tunnels were part of the memory they had recovered. The memory was strong in some, but incomplete in others. He turned to Leanne. "We need to reinforce their memory. Cannot let half of them see humans as enemies." Leanne agreed. "We need more data, more signals. We need to show them the truth of our existence." The next day, Rian, Leanne, Taro, and Nia ventured above ground carefully. The machines had created a circle of protection around the ruins. None of the smaller machines approached them aggressively. The leader remained at the center, its glowing eyes calm, watching them. It was as if it understood that Rian and his team were allies. Rian raised his hand in greeting. The machine did not respond in the way humans would, but its sensors shifted, following the movement. The smaller machines around it mirrored the gesture in their own mechanical way. Rian smiled. It was a sign of recognition. They understood that humans were not the enemy. Leanne pointed toward a massive pile of metal the machines had gathered. "They are building something," he said. "Something big." Rian studied it. "They are rebuilding, but not to destroy. They are constructing a new base, a safe place, maybe even a city for humans and machines to coexist," Nia whispered. "It looks alive," Rian nodded. "It is alive, in a way that we created. The machines are remembering their purpose, and that purpose is to protect us." For the first time in years, hope returned to the survivors. They saw that the world could change again. The machines had been demons, yes, but they were now guardians. And they were a testament to what humans could create, even when the world had fallen apart. That night, the survivors sat in the tunnels, listening to the steady hum above. The machines moved with purpose, building, repairing, and organizing. Their red glow had faded to a calm orange, a sign of their recognition. The ground shook, but now it was not frightening. It was alive, vibrant, full of energy and memory. Rian looked at Mira. We prayed to the gods, he said. But it was not the gods who came. It was the work of human hands, the memory of our own making. That is what answered our call. Mira smiled softly. Then perhaps we were never alone, Rian nodded. Never alone. And now we have a chance to rise again. Outside, the machines continued their work through the night, constructing, shaping, and protecting. The survivors watched, knowing that the demons of the earth had become something more. They had become a bridge between the past and the future. Humanity's legacy was not lost. It had only slept, waiting for someone to remind it of its purpose. The morning sun barely touched the ruins, the light pale and thin, but it revealed the work of the machines in full. Rian, Leontaro, and Nia climbed to a vantage point, surveying the transformation. What had once been broken and lifeless was now organized, strange shapes of metal rising in careful patterns. The machines were no longer destructive. They moved with intention, as if remembering a purpose that had been lost for centuries. Rian could not take his eyes off the largest of them, the leader that had first awakened. Its glowing orange eyes scanned the area with steady focus. Smaller machines moved around it, gathering materials, stacking metal with precision, arranging pieces in perfect symmetry. The humans realized that these creatures once feared were learning again. Lian studied the patterns from their vantage point. They're building something more than a shelter, he said. Look at how the shapes are forming. This is not just construction. It is a network, a base, or maybe even a city. Ania nodded. And they are protecting the ruins. No one can enter without being noticed. Taro pointed to the outer edge where the smaller machines patrolled. They are also defending themselves from anything that might threaten the project. That is smart. They remember discipline and hierarchy. Rian turned to Mira and the other survivors who had come up behind them. They are beginning to understand that humans are part of the system they were built to protect, he said. We need to reinforce this understanding before it is incomplete. That night, Rian began sending more sequences through the old communication lines. He sent not only code, but images, carefully designed sequences that reminded the machines of humans working together. Children laughing, engineers building machines, people planting trees, and helping one another, all the simple acts that defined humanity's purpose. As the signal reached the machines, the change was noticeable immediately. One of the smaller Earthborn hesitated while placing a metal beam. It stopped, turned toward the source of the signal, and its sensors glowed with shifting colors. Orange, then blue. Then it moved back to the work, more carefully than before. As if considering every action, Rian smiled. It is beginning. They are recognizing the humans again. They are beginning to remember their original mission. Lian checked the readings. The core memory stabilization is increasing. The more sequences you send, the more they integrate the information. Soon, their actions will align with our purpose. But there is still danger. Some of the smaller machines did not respond. Their red glow remained faintly visible in the distance. They moved toward the outskirts of the ruins, scanning and probing. They were incomplete, confused, unsure if humans belonged in the same world as they did. Rian gathered his team. We need to reach them too. We cannot ignore the ones who have not remembered. If half of them see humans as enemies, we are in trouble. The next day, they ventured toward the smaller machines. Naya led, scouting ahead, careful not to provoke the mechanical sentries. Taro mapped the area, ensuring no one became trapped. Lian carried tools and old communication equipment. Rian held a transmitter, prepared to send targeted sequences to reinforce memory in specific units. When they reached the edge of the patrolling machines, Rian raised his hand. The nearest machine paused. Its sensors flickered blue and orange. It tilted its head as if listening. Rian spoke softly, sending the sequence through the transmitter. The machine's movements became hesitant, then deliberate. It looked around, then slowly approached one of the broken vehicles the humans had used for shelter. The other smaller machines began to react similarly. Their red glow dimmed, replaced by orange. They scanned the humans and the surrounding ruins, as if assessing whether this new interaction was part of their remembered mission. Rian spoke again. was quietly repeating sequences through the transmitter. You were made to protect. Humans are not your enemies. You are part of our world, the lead machine observed from the center of the field. Its sensors focused on the humans, and then, in an almost imperceptible movement, it raised one arm. The smaller machines paused and turned to follow. It was a signal, a recognition that humans belonged to their memory and their purpose. The survivors watched in awe. What had been terrifying moments ago was now a demonstration of intelligence and awareness. The Earthborn were no longer mindless demons of metal. They were learning. They were understanding. They were recalling their original purpose. By nightfall, the machines had formed a circle around the ruins. The smaller units moved to patrol the perimeter while others worked on structures at the center. The leader remained at its core, overseeing everything. Rian and his team returned to the tunnels to rest, exhausted but filled with hope. Inside the tunnels, Mira gathered the children. Do you see that? She whispered. They are not monsters. They are protecting us. Rian nodded. They are remembering who they were made to protect. Humanity is still part of their memory. We can coexist with them, Leon added. The more we reinforce their memory, the safer we will be. We need to continue sending sequences. We need to remind them of our purpose, our work, our world. The next morning, Rian returned to the surface alone. He wanted to speak directly through the transmitter while observing the leader and the smaller machines. He climbed to a small hill overlooking the field. From there, he could see the machines at work. He sent images of humans planting forests, building cities, and caring for one another. He showed moments of joy, cooperation, and creation. The machines paused, scanned, and adjusted. The leader's sensors glowed brighter, and the smaller machines began to mimic the movements. Some carried materials in a coordinated pattern that resembled human labor. Rian smiled, realizing that they were learning again. This is not destruction. This is civilization, he whispered. They are helping us rebuild. Suddenly, a faint tremor shook the hill. The leader raised its head and emitted a low hum. The smaller machines responded immediately, halting their movements. Rian could feel the energy vibrating through the ground. The hum was a signal, not of aggression, but of communication. The Earthborn were speaking to each other through sound and vibration, coordinating their actions. Rian realized something important. They were no longer following blind commands. They were reasoning. They were integrating memory with action. And most importantly, they were recognizing humans as part of the world they were meant to protect. He returned to the tunnels and shared his observations with Lien, Taro, and Nia. They understand now, he said. The machines are recalling the purpose of their creation. They are aware of us. They are beginning to act as guardians, not demons. Lien looked relieved. We have done it. But there is still work to be done. We must ensure that every unit remembers. Otherwise, some may act against us. Rian nodded. Then we continue. We remind them. We strengthen their memory until it is complete. Days passed, and the Earthborn worked tirelessly. The leader coordinated the construction of structures that could shelter humans. Smaller machines continued patrolling, learning, and following the principles being reinforced by Rian and his team. The survivors began to emerge from the tunnels, observing the machines with cautious optimism. Mira gathered everyone. We prayed to the gods for help, she said. But it was not the gods who came. It was the work of human hands, the machines we once built. They have returned to protect us. Rian nodded, watching the glowing orange lights of the leader. We created them. They remembered. And now, together, we can rebuild what was lost. The machines moved in harmony across the ruins. Some worked on clearing debris. Others repaired damaged structures. The leader observed every action, guiding and teaching the smaller machines. Rian realized that humanity had not only survived, but had awakened a force that could restore the world as night fell. The survivors stood together on a ridge overlooking the field of machines. The orange glow of the Earthborn painted the ruins with light. They were no longer demons. They were guardians of humanity's future. Rian looked at Mira. This is only the beginning, he said. If we continue, we can rebuild our world. Not because of the gods, but because we created the guardians who remember us. Mira smiled softly. Then we have hope. True hope. The survivors watched as the machines worked through the night, their movements steady, deliberate, and full of purpose. Humanity's creations had awakened, and with them, a new era of protection and partnership began. Rian knew that challenges would come. But for the first time in years, the Earth felt alive again. The demons of the Earth had become something more. They had become allies. They had become guardians. And the world, for the first time in centuries, had a chance to rise. The ground was shaking like a living thing as Rian and his team climbed down the molten tunnels. The heat was so strong that their suits turned red from the glow. Every breath was heavy, every sound deep and sharp. Behind them, the upper tunnels had already collapsed under the core's attack. The air was full of dust, smoke, and echoes of faraway explosions. Rian knew there was no turning back now. The only path left was forward, into the burning heart of the world. With him were 5 humans who had stayed to the end. It was Lyra, the young mechanic who had lost her family to the first core invasion. There was Den, an old engineer who still wore the same cracked goggles he had used in the mines before the war. And there were 3 soldiers from the Root Guard, their faces covered in ash and steel dust. None of them spoke much. The silence between them was not fear. It was focus. As they moved deeper, the air began to hum. The walls were covered in glowing lines that pulsed like veins. The deeper they went, the brighter the light became. It was not fire, but energy that seemed alive. It flowed through stone and metal like blood through flesh. They all felt it in their bones. Lura whispered that it was the breath of the world. Den said it was the core's heartbeat. Rian said nothing. He knew what it was. It was the Origin Forge. The path opened into a huge chamber. It was larger than any human city. At the center stood a giant sphere of molten crystal, spinning slowly in a pool of light. Round it floated dark shapes like pieces of a broken star. Machines worked in silence, lowering great pillars into the glowing liquid. The sound was low but steady, like drums beneath the ground. The Origin Forge was awake. Then they saw him. Vorth, the leader of the core, stood near the edge of the molten pool. His body was taller than any human machine, covered in dark metal that flowed like living rock. His eyes burned like 2 suns. He turned when Rian's group entered, and his voice rolled across the chamber like thunder. "You have come far, human. Too far for your kind." Rian stepped forward. His suit was cracked and his visor scratched, but his stance was firm. "We came for what you stole. This world does not belong to you." Vorth laughed, the sound echoing off the stone walls. "Belong? You dig into our flesh and call it yours? You take from our veins and call it life? We were here before your kind could speak. You prayed for power and we gave it. Now you dare to claim what was always ours." Lura lifted her weapon, her voice shaking but clear. "You gave nothing. You took everything." Vorth looked at her and the others. "We gave you survival. Without us, your species would have turned to dust. We offered fire and strength. You chose to use it for rebellion." Rian took a step closer. "We did not choose to be slaves." For a long moment, there was silence. The molten light flickered between them. Then Vorth raised his hand. The ground cracked, and from the walls emerged huge core sentinels. Their bodies were made of molten stone and metal, each one as tall as a tower. The humans prepared their weapons, but Rian raised his hand to stop them. "Not yet," he said. He looked back at Din, who was setting up a small control device near the wall. Den nodded once. The plan was already in motion. They had found the code that could reverse the forge's flow, sending its energy back into the planet instead of feeding the core. But to do that, someone had to stay behind and activate it by hand. Rian knew it had to be him. The core moved closer, their molten feet shaking the floor. Rian turned his visor to his team. "Go," he said. "You know the path. When you reach the surface, send the signal." Lura's eyes widened. "Said we'd all go together." Rian shook his head. "If I go with you, the forge stays alive. If I stay, humanity lives." Before she could speak again, the ground roared. Vorth was moving toward them. "You think one human can stop the will of the earth?" Rian smiled for the first time. One human is enough. He ran toward the forge. The light grew so bright it hurt to look at. Energy struck the air like lightning. Vorth reached out with his molten arm, but Rian leaped over a broken platform and landed near the control core. Den's voice came through the comm. The system is ready. Just one push. Rian placed his hand on the control pad. The molten energy burned through his gloves, but he held on. Vorth roared, his voice shaking the entire chamber. Will destroy yourself. Rian shouted back. Then I will destroy your chains with me. The pad lit up. The forge's color changed from red to white. The walls cracked, and beams of light shot upward through the tunnels. The machine screamed as the energy reversed. Instead of flowing into the core, it began to drain from them. Vorth staggered, his molten body breaking apart. The sentinels fell, their fire turning to ash dot above. The sky lit up with pillars of light as the earth released its stolen power. The dark clouds burned away, and for the first time in decades, the stars returned. Lura and the others reached the surface just as the mountain behind them exploded in a storm of light. The ground rippled like water, and a great column of fire rose into the sky. The blast threw them to the ground. For a long time, no one moved. Then, slowly, the light faded. The mountain was gone. Only a wide, glowing crater remained, shining with soft blue fire. Lura crawled to the edge and looked down. There was nothing but light. She whispered Rian's name, but only the wind answered. Days passed. The fires cooled. The air became clean again. Across the ruined lands, the same light spread through the soil. Dead forests began to grow green shoots. Rivers that had turned black began to clear. The core's machines stopped moving, their bodies turning to stone. Humanity had won, but the cost was heavy. The root guard built a small monument on the edge of the crater. It was made from stone and steel, shaped like an open hand reaching upward. On it, they carved the last message Rian had sent before the explosion. We prayed to gods and found none. We became our own salvation. Years passed and life returned to the earth. New generations grew up not knowing the war, but they were. Taught the story of the man who had gone into the earth's heart and freed their world. They learned that strength was not in waiting for gods or fearing demons, but in standing together as humans. Lura became one of the new leaders. She worked to rebuild the cities not with core machines but with human hands. She often came to the crater to watch the light that still glowed faintly from below. She said it was the breath of the world keeping watch over them. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, she stood there again, holding a small piece of metal she had found in the ruins. It was part of Rian's old helmet, cracked and burned, but still marked with the emblem of the root guard. She placed it beside the monument and whispered, "You said one human was enough. You were right." The wind moved gently across the crater. The blue light flickered as if answering her. She smiled and turned away. As the years rolled on, the name Rian became a legend. Children played games where they pretended to fight the core. Old miners told tales of the man who forged the world anew. In every rebuilt city, a single phrase was carved on the walls of the central halls. Humanity bows to no one. That phrase became a promise. When new challenges came, when storms struck, when machines failed, people remembered it. They remembered that no god or demon could decide their fate. Only their own courage could. The world slowly healed. The sky stayed clear, and stars filled the night once more. The rivers glowed with soft life, and the soil gave birth to new forests. Humanity began building ships again, not to escape the earth, but to explore beyond it with pride. They no longer prayed to unseen powers. They looked to the stars with open eyes and steady hearts. Some said that deep below in the heart of the planet something still moved, a faint hum, a heartbeat of molten light, steady and calm. They said it was not the core, it was something else. It was the memory of the man who had turned the fire of the earth into hope. And so, the story of Rian and the demons of the earth lived on. It's not as a tale of despair, but as proof of what humans could become when they refused to bow.